Now, the Prime Minister met with the Northern Territory's Chief Minister Natasha Fyles in Canberra today, just over a week after his flying visit to Alice Springs. They discussed the report commissioned into the crime and public safety crisis, including whether, instead of allowing communities to opt in for alcohol bans now, the widespread grog ban that was scrapped last year ought to be reimposed, with communities then given the option of opting out with their own alcohol management plans. But there'll be no immediate call, with both leaders deferring the issue to next week so they can discuss next steps with their respective cabinets. Let's bring in Nationals leader David Littleproud now, who joins me from Ryford in Queensland. Good to talk to you, David. Just on that outcome and the likely response, which is something I think Matt Cunningham from Sky News has tipped. In fact, as he predicted this before anyone arrived in Alice Springs, any politicians did. It's just so frustrating, isn't it? Because your own Senator Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price and even the Labor local member Marion Scrimshaw were saying way back in June last year, not to mention a number of other Aboriginal groups, were saying don't scrap these alcohol bans.
Well, exactly. On the 9th of June, there was 9 community groups in Alice Springs that gave that advice, not just to Jacinta Price and to the local member, Scrimmager. The fact were that they sent that to the minister to say, please don't scrap this. This is a policy that works. Grog bans work. And if you complement and supplement that with cashless debit cards, you take thousands of dollars out of that community that go into bottle shops and into the wrong hands that perpetrate violence against women and children and against the hardworking men and women that have the sweat and courage or the conviction of their own wallet to start their own business in Alice Springs and are being robbed. And when the advice was coming through and the minister ignores it, quite clearly there's a failure of government here. It needs to be fixed, but it's not just the federal government. The Northern Territory government has been asleep at the wheel on this for some time. And this is where we simply need action. We need the bureaucracy to be on the ground and to make sure that there's bespoke models about how we solve these problems. Then there's not just one silver bullet to it. It's a suite of measures that need to be put in place and that are unique to Alice Springs.
Well, this is the other point I wanted to make, because while Alice Springs is in such a chronic situation at the moment, there are similar and related issues in many regional towns across the country, also in the Territory, of course, places like Katherine and Tennant Creek, but places like Ceduna, Port Augusta in South Australia, and Burke and Brewanna and Wilcannia and in New South Wales and outback Queensland. You know the pack drill up in the Kimberley. How much of a focus is there going to be now on making sure whatever actions are put in place here can be transferable, that we can start to tackle these intractable problems around the country day in, day out, and not just wait for the great crisis to erupt?
Well, this is where the Nationals' point of view is about how we fix this, is that there has to be local decisions driven by the local community, not just by one or two people, but by the entire community. And they need to come together because they know what will solve these issues within their local community, whether it be in Carnarvon in Western Australia, which I urge the Prime Minister to go and visit as well, because I was only there about 6 months ago and saw firsthand the challenges they're facing. And the President of the Shire there courageously has come out and said, we have a problem and we need help. And Mark McGowan and the Prime Minister and Linda Burney need to get there and get there quickly and understand that they'll have a bespoke solution, as will Wilcannia, as will Cunnamulla or any other community that has challenges. But I don't think it's all doom and gloom either, because I think there is hope, and I think there has been closing the gap of some of these issues. And even in my electorate, I just said Cunnamulla. I've got to say Cunnamulla's come a long way. So to as many communities in my electorate. But as you go north, there's been further challenges. So there is hope, but we need to let the communities be empowered, not just one or two individuals, but the entire community, because they're the ones that'll have buy-in in this.
Just quickly, David, there's going to be a backflip on these alcohol bans. That means that the federal Labor government and the Territory Labor government are going to have to backflip on a decision they supported more than 6 months ago. Fine, who cares about the partisan politics? But does that mean there's a chance then that the federal government could also backflip on cashless welfare cards? Because isn't this another retrograde step, getting rid of them?
It is, and I hope they do. And I'm not going to make any political fodder out of this. If they go back and make the right decisions, then credit to them. You don't, as a government, always get it right. And as a government, we were there, we didn't always get it right. But cashless debit cards are things that take money out of the hands of people that perpetrate domestic violence and violence against business owners and against children. And it's important that we understand that it is a privilege to get Australian taxpayers' money. It is not a right. And with that comes mutual responsibility that you are a good citizen and that you live up to your responsibilities as a parent in making sure that your children are going to school and that they are fed and watered every day with 3 square meals.
Yep.
And if you can't do that, then there should be pecuniary measures. And the government said that they've taken this away because it stripped away dignity. Well, sorry, what about the dignity of those children? What about the dignity of those women that are cowering in corners in dark places across the country because they're scared of a partner who is high on drugs or high on alcohol?
Absolutely, we've got to keep on it.
Violence against them. Where is their dignity?
Absolutely, protecting those kids is the number one priority. Thanks for joining us, David. Appreciate your last weekend before heading back down to Canberra next week.
Thanks, mate.
That's David Littleproud, the Nationals leader, Federal Parliament meeting in Canberra next week for the first sitting week of the year.